So, alam ko na alam niyo yung history ng dalawang bansang to. Na yung Japan, they invaded the Philippines year 1941. So, they stayed here in our country for 3 years. And that time, pinalitan nila yung education system na binuo ng Spaniards. Nung pumunta sila dito, pinalitan nila yung education systems. Japanese regime, the teaching of Tagalog Philippine history and character education was reserved for Filipinos. And in-emphasize nila yung love for work and dignity of labor that time. Nung pumunta yung mga Japan dito, in-emphasize nila yung love for work and dignity for labor. So yun yung brief history ng bansang Japan sa pag-invade dito sa ating bansa. So next slide tayo. History of Japan. Yung education system nila, history ng Japan. So during the federal period, many private educational institution already existed. This included Terracotta, and then mga private temple schools and special schools specialized for the samurai class established by daimyo. So this implies that public education never existed until the Meiji Restoration. So nung time ng federal period, wala pang public schools until dumating itong period ni Meiji Restoration. So ito namang Meiji Restoration brought Western ideals to Japanese education, as Encyclopedia Britannica states that many of the points of the Japanese educational system were derived from the European continental system, notably the German system. So mostly yung educational system ng Japan is more related sa German system. More on Western sila kasi sila yung sumakop din sa Japan. So yun yung history, short history ng Japan. Next is the history of the Philippines. So education in the Philippines was unstructured, informal, and devoid of methods before the Spaniards arrived. Instead of making further emphasis on vocational education and less in academic performance. So, nung time na hindi pa sinakop ng Spaniards ang ating bansa, which is Philippines, is yung education natin, wala pang plano, walang kaporma-porma, walang unstructured. Walang sinusundang plano, walang tinuturo, meron man pero hindi maayos. Until such time, the colonization of Spaniards brought a change to the unstructured education system, vocation-oriented education to religion-oriented education. Nung dumating na ang Spaniards dito sa ating bansa, when they colonized Philippines, nagkaroon ng mas magandang education system. They built a structure for education, but hindi para sa lahat ng Pilipino, kundi sa mga elites lang, sa mga mayayaman. And then, education of the Philippines changed from time to time as colonizer change as well as changes emphasis of education. So, kung sino man yung mag-invade sa Philippines, yung magko-colonize sa Philippines is they changing the education system. Kung ano yung pinagawa or plinano ng naunang nag-colonize dito sa ating bansa, pinapalitan ng bagong nagko-colonize sa ating bansa. So, ganun yung history noon ng education system here in the Philippines. Yon. That is the history of Japan and Philippines.
Good day, everyone. So we're now going to discuss the best practices of Japan. The first one is in here, no exam for the first 2 years of school. So dito may theory. Ang theory is kaya no exam kasi tinuturuan muna ng mga teachers, mga estudyante kung paano gumalang. Kasi dito more on character development ang tinuturo. Paano yung proper etiquette. Siyempre, kahit naman tinuturuan sila sa bahay, sa school, sa first 3 years nila, unang pagpasok hanggang 3 years nila sa school is character development muna kung paano ang rumispeto, siyempre alam naman natin yung pagbabaw, tradition nila yon. And mas magandang character development muna kaysa yung mga subjects na kailangan ding aralin ng mga estudyante. Para alam nilang rumispeto kung sino yung kausap nila, yung mas matanda sa kanila, and kung alam nila kung sino yung teacher and sa estudyante lang. Siyempre, sino ba naman ang ayaw ng mairespeto? And the second one is no janitors but students clean the school. Alam naman natin siguro lahat sa Japan is malinis. Malinis ang Japan. Mayroon silang proper segregation and stricto sila doon. And dito estudyante mismo ang naglilinis ng CR, ng classroom. Siyempre, alam naman mga teachers, di ba? Pero, super linis. Hindi, unlike dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, kahit kapag nilinisan mo, magiging madumi na naman, ilang oras lang. Pero doon, kapag nagamit is nalinisan agad. Siyempre, kalat mo, linis mo. And dito, nade-develop din yung pagiging caring ng mga estudyante sa kapaligiran nila and sa kanilang sarili, of course. And the third one is students eat the same balanced meals. Syempre balanced meal. Japanese is strict sila sa health nila. Masyado silang healthy. Alam naman natin siguro yon. Kahit hindi na iluto, mayroon ngayong hindi na lang nila niluluto eh. Kinakain na lang, nahugasan lang, tapos diretso kain. Wala silang masyadong preservatives doon. Students, yung mga estudyante doon, kung estudyante ka ng Japan, pare-parehas yung pagkain nyo sa kapag nasa canteen na. And para sa healthy eating, healthy life nila. And the fourth one is public schools teach traditional art. They teach, according to my research, students are taught traditional arts like shodo or the Japanese calligraphy and haiku, their formal style of poetry, and we Filipino students are familiar with. Alam naman natin yung haiku, di ba? Ito yung formal style of poetry nila. And inaalala ko, lagi natin itong tinatakal sa English and Filipino subjects natin. Gumagawa pa nga tayo, di ba? And the haiku promotes students' awareness and value for national and cultural traditions. Ano sila talaga sa kultura nila and tradisyon, hindi nawawala. And the shodo involves writing kanji and kana, characters with a bamboo rush in ink on rice paper. The art requires knowledge and help instill respect for cultural tradition. Siyempre, lahat naman ng art yata is kailangan ng knowledge. Paano mo yung magagawa kung wala kang kaalam-alam, di ba? And compared to the Philippines, use of objective boards, use of proficiency chart and attendance chart, syempre imposible namang sa Japan walang attendance chart din, di ba? Assignment of groups, cleaners, experiments, bulletin boards. Syempre meron din sa kanila, pero sa atin, kapag cleaners ka, according to my experience, laging tinatakasan kasi ako minsan, charis, pero naglilinis din naman. And now we're going to move to the next slide, the ideology of education. Japanese treat education as very important, which is the reason why the country has the highest literacy rates in the world according to Groyler 1990. Siyempre, lahat naman ng ang education talaga, lahat naman yata ng countries is pinaka-importante ang education. And yun lang kung nakapag-aral ka nga, pero yung attitude, parang walang pinag-aralan, wala lang rin, di ba? Yung ilang taon ka na nag-aral, tapos ganun lang. Meron kasing ganun na mga tao, di ba? Mataas, porket nakapag-aral is, ang taas-taas na ng tingin sa sarili. And in the case of the Philippines, Filipinos have deep point of view of education in which it is treated as the main street of further social and economic mobility. This was materialized from the Americans due to their colonial rule, whether ideal of democratic society in which individuals could get ahead through good educational attainments. Siyempre, lahat naman may point of view. Kasi, kapag wala kang education, wala kang degree, kumbaga is mahirap maghanap ng trabaho, lalong-lalo na dito sa Pilipinas. Lagi kang tinatapak-tapakan, ganoon ang baba ng tingin nila dito sa'yo. Pero ewan ko lang sa ibang bansa, kasi sa ibang bansa, most likely sa Japan, kahit hindi ka nakapag-aral is maraming trabaho ang naghihintay sa'yo. Pero syempre, yung standards nila ng education is walang kanyon dito sa atin. And education is necessity of building a person's character through developing one's personality, improving ability, independency, and pursuing happy life. Ayun na nga yung sinasabi ko kanina. Siyempre, kapag nakapag-aral ka, maganda na yung buhay, chill-chill lang, pero siguro hindi. Ayun na nga. So, Japan and Philippines have same point of view of education. Kasi, syempre, education is, lahat naman yata ng bansa is importante sa kanila ang education. Kasi ito yung nagkukan sa atin para maiahon natin ang ating bansa sa kahirapan. Siyempre, sarili na muna natin, yung sarili natin at first. Tapos magbibigay din ng economic benefits sa ating bansa. And according to my research, syempre, apakakan naman na education help us to alleviate poverty, reduce crime, and increase economic benefits. Siyempre, kapag naman nakapag-aral na tayo, lahat na siguro is maganda yung buhay. Siguro, di ako sure. Siyempre, kapag naman nakapag-aral ka, pero tamad ka naman, di wala kang pupuntahan yung edukasyon mo. Nasayang lang yung yun. And thank you.
Hey, so good morning to everyone, and our topic for today is about education funding from the difference between Japan and the Philippines. So let's start, and we talk about the difference of funding in Japan and Philippines. Or in Japan fund its school through a combination of support from the national, prefectural, and municipal governments. In public compulsory education, prefectures pay 2/3 of teachers' salaries and the national government pays 1/3. And here in the Philippines, we tend to focus on the Republic Act 5446 47, which is an act creating a special education fund to be consulted from the proceeds and additional property tax and certain portion of the taxes on Virginia type cigarette and duties on imported leaf tobacco, defining the activities to be financed, creating school boards for the purpose and approaching funds therefrom. So, as said a while ago, that Japan funds their schools or their education system through public governance, which is from the national government of the country, and which is a helpful support from their countries. And another is from their municipal or local government, which is the support of their leaders in their community. That it acts on the support of most of their salaries and their funds. Therefore, the national government supports the public schools in one third of its resources or the materials needed. And while here in the Philippines, uh, we we get the support in educational funding from the national government and also the local government, but we tend to focus on the special education, on which is it's another type of or another way of uh, educational learning, like those from the Tibet program or any other courses which is for 2 year courses education as an example of educational attainment, and it provides the fund for the resources of the school. And the other fund resources where the educational system here in the Philippines came from the uh, organizations from the private parties that helps the uh, school. Just the same as on the businesses that helps the school on the supplies, which is already given on the government issues. So that's the focus here in the Philippines. And in between the two countries, the similarities of Japan and the Philippines in the educational funding is that it is from the government, the local government, the national government, and the uh, private parties which supports the education of the school. And another is that the similarities between Japan and the Philippines is that uh, the focus on the school is to provide the health care for the learners and their services, which act as an uh, uh, public service in which helps the learners to grow. And in the funding, it also tends to provide the needs of the school, which is beneficial to everyone. And on the other side, uh, there are there are kinds of school governance which is providing the funds on which is from the private schools, also as it tends to help broaden the uh, resources of the schools for the purpose of enhancing and developing the school for a good reason and the purpose of educating. And I hope you listen very well, and thank you for listening.
Good morning. I am May Nutiklaan Lumaylay, and my report is all about the educational structure of Japan and Philippines. The Japanese school system primarily consists of 6-year elementary school, 3-year junior high school, and 3-year high school, followed by a 2 or 3-year junior colleges or a 4-year colleges. Compulsory education lasts for 9 years through elementary and junior high school. In Japan, the beginning of their class is from April and it ends in March of the following year. Most schools adopt a 3-year semester system, with the first semester from April to August, and the second semester from September to December, and the third semester is from January to March. While the education in the Philippines is offered through formal and non-formal system. Kapag sinasabi nilang formal education, typically span of 14 years and is structured in a 6 plus 4 plus 4 system. 6 years from primary school education, 4 years from secondary school education, and 4 years of higher education leading to bachelor degree or college. In the Philippines, ang ating academic school years is nagsisimula to June and matatapos in March, a period that covers to a total of 40 weeks. Ang aming ang educational structure na nakuha namin in the Philippines is based on the old curriculum. That's all. Thank you.
So we have here other things to compare between the educational system of Japan and Philippines. So in the first column, we have your school terms, grading system, school events and activities, teaching loads, and the organizational structure. And then on the second column, we have here Philippines dapat ito. And then on the third column is Japan, nag-interchange lang sila. So ang school term dito sa Philippines ang isang school year is composed of 2 terms. That is the first term and the second term. And each term is composed of 2 quarters each. So dito sa Philippines meron yung first grading, second grading, third grading, and fourth grading. So yung first grading and second grading, that is the first term, and then the third grading and the fourth grading, that is the second term. Whereas in Japan, they have 3 terms sa isang school year. So ang first term nila ay mag-start from April to July, and then they will have their summer break after that, and then they will go back to school on September to start their second term. So their second term is from September to December, and then they will have their winter break also, and then they will go back to their school on January to start their third term, that is January to March, and then next month, that is April again, mag-start ulit sila ng another school year. Next is the grading system. Here in the Philippines, every school activity like quizzes, seatworks, recitation, and test scores contribute to the computation of grade. So every puntos ng mga students ay may impact sa pag-compute ng kanilang final grade. Pero sa Japan, naniniwala sila sa kasabihang no student must be left behind. So kahit mababa yung scores ng mga students ay papasa pa rin sila to the next grade level because hindi sila masyadong strict sa grades. Hindi importante sa kanila kung mababa or mataas, basta ang importante is nakita nilang nag-effort yung student, and they will move on to the next grade level. Next is the school events and activities. Here in the Philippines, before mag-start ng klase, meron tinatawag na brigada eskwela, wherein the parents will go to school to clean, ganyan, to prepare the classroom sa pasukan ng kanilang mga anak. And then meron ding intrams, moving up, and graduation ceremony, which usually happens on the month of March and April. And then field trips, meron ding field trips ang mga bata, especially yung mga kindergarten. And they also have the parents and teachers conference once every quarter to see if may improvement ba yung performance ng mga students and kung ano yung mga gagawin nilang mga projects. In Japan, meron silang welcome party for new teachers sa opening ng first term. And then of course, meron silang opening ceremony, opening program.
Good day everyone, I am Kimberly Lamuchana. Today what I am going to report is about educational system of Japan and Philippines, so let's compare. So let's go to Japan and Philippines teaching loads. In Japan, elementary teacher teach all. They teach how to read, write, and also how to write in a cursive and even having a good manner. As you can see, Philippines also have that. Same also in the Philippines, elementary teachers teach all subjects like Hekasi, science, English, and many more. They are the same in Japan. Meanwhile, in Japan, junior high teacher depends on the area of specification. In Japan, junior teacher teaches their assigned subject with their student. Just like also in the Philippines, junior teacher teaches also their assigned subject in their classes. Diba, usually, pansin nyo din nung junior high school tayo, pa-iba-iba yung teacher natin. Iba yung teacher natin sa English, iba teacher natin sa Filipino, and iba ang teacher natin sa TLE. Yung teacher di-teach kung ano yung gusto nilang ituro, kung ano yung specialization na meron sila. Okay, so let's go. In Japan, teachers are assigned to different grade level every year. It means they are reshuffled every year into different grade level. Just not like in the Philippines, they teach where they are assigned. Kung example, sa elementary, doon lang sila sa elementary. Kung sa kindergarten, doon lang sila sa kindergarten. Hindi tulad ng Japan, nagre-reshuffle sila ng teacher. So, let's go to Japan and Philippines organizational structure. In Japan, they have principal. Their main duties include disciplining or adjusting student, approving teachers' curriculum, and ensuring the school environment is safe for all students and staff members. Same also in the Philippines, they have principal and they are also the same role in Japan. Kung ano yung role ng principal doon sa Japan, ganun din ang role dito sa Pilipinas. So, next, in Japan, they have vice principal, while in the Philippines, they also a teacher, a head teacher. In Japan, the role of vice principal, it assumes all responsibilities of the school, including the courses provided and related administrative work. While in the Philippines, they have head teacher, same role and vice principal. Iba lang yung tawag doon sa Japan ng sa Japan kasi ang tawag doon vice principal. Habang dito sa Pilipinas, ang tawag natin sa kanila ay head teacher. Yun ang pinagkaiba. Pero same role lang sila. Okay, so in Japan, they have classroom teacher. Their role is to help students develop the skills necessary to learn, understand, interpret, and appropriate differentiated curriculum. Ito yung mga guro natin, kaya diba sa daycare natin, sila yung nagtuturo sa atin ng paano gumuhin, paano maglaro ng clay, paano mag-color, ganun din yun. So, Japan only have clear organizational structure, the principal, vice principal, and classroom teacher. While in the Philippines, they have six, the principal, head teacher, master teacher, classroom teacher, and non-teaching staff. In the Philippines, they have master teacher, while in Japan, they do not have. The role of master teacher in the Philippines, they share significant leadership, responsibilities, and authority, like the school administrative team. While the classroom teacher, their role is to help a student develop the skills necessary to their understanding, interpretation, and appropriate, and also appreciating different idea. They are the same in Japan. Yung classroom teacher din nila, yung classroom teacher ng Japan at classroom teacher ng Philippines ay same role din sila. Kung ano ginagawa ng classroom teacher doon sa Japan, ganun din yung ginagawa ng classroom teacher dito sa Pilipinas. While in the Philippines, we have the non-teaching staff. The role is to assist student staff and others to have information about examination, courses. They will look after maintenance, academic building, and administrative building. Kumbaga, ito yung mga janitor, janitress, kumbaga mga security guard. Sila yung mga nagbabantay ng school, sila yung nagbibigay ng information pag may pumapasok. Ganun lang yun. Ang pinakaiba dito is, Philippines have non-teaching staff, while in Japan ay wala. Okay, that's all. Next is, education is the most powerful weapon which can use to change the world. You know, education can change the world. Kasi lahat tayo naman kapag may knowledge tayo dito sa mundo, di ba? We can do such things na pwedeng makapagbabago sa ating mundo. Tulad ng, tingnan mo, today is may technology. Baka sa kabilang panahon, pwede nating mas i-upgrade pa. Pwede nating i-upgrade pa, di ba? We can defeat yung tinatawag nating ignorante, di ba? Wala nang magiging ignorante dito sa mundo. Wala nang magiging mangmang if lahat tayo ay makakapag-aral. Okay, that's all. Thank you for listening.